The sun hung low over the dusty streets of Eldridge Hollow, casting long shadows across the crowded festival like fingers reaching for secrets. Laughter and the sizzle of street food mingled in the air, but beneath it all, a boy's quiet terror cut through the noise. Leo Vargas, just 12, with dirt-streaked cheeks and eyes wide as shattered glass, darted through the throng of families and vendors. He clutched a crumpled flyer from the local charity booth, his small frame trembling as he scanned the faces around him. No one noticed him at first, not the couples swaying to the live band, not the kids chasing balloons. But then, in a moment that froze the chaos, Leo spotted the lone figure leaning against a weathered pickup truck at the edge of the lot. Aaron Slate Monroe, 47, and built like the granite his road name evoked, stood with arms crossed over his leather vest, the iron promise patch gleaming faintly under the string lights. His graying beard framed a face etched with old burns and older regrets, scars from a life pulling people from flames he could no longer fight full-time. The festival's cheer felt distant to him. He'd come alone, nursing a coffee, drawn by the vague pull of routine in a town that had changed since his firefighting days. That's when Leo approached, weaving past a group of laughing teens, his sneakers scuffing the gravel. The boy hesitated, then stepped close, too close for a stranger, rising on his toes to whisper into Slate's ear. "Help my mom," Leo breathed, the words fragile as smoke, carrying the weight of unspoken pleas. Slate's hand paused mid-sip, the coffee going cold in his grip. The boy's voice landed like a live wire, sparking memories Slate had buried deep. 10 years back, in the choking heat of a warehouse blaze, he'd clasped hands with Javier Vargas, a fellow firefighter trapped under collapsing beams. "If I don't make it," Javier had gasped, blood flecking his lips. "Watch over Rosa and the kid. Promise me, brother." Slate had nodded, the oath sealing tighter than any oath he'd sworn to the department. Javier didn't make it. Slate carried that vow like a hidden tattoo, checking in sporadically on Rosa from afar, holidays, a quiet drop-off of groceries, but life and the club had pulled him away. Now, this whisper from Javier's son, it wasn't coincidence. It was the past roaring back on the wind. Slate knelt slowly, his knees protesting against the rough ground, bringing his eyes level with Leo's. The festival's clamor faded to a hum, the twang of guitars, the pop of fireworks testing the dusk. Up close, the boy looked smaller, his dark hair matted with sweat, a faint bruise shadowing his jaw like a question mark. "Leo, right," Slate said softly, his voice gravel-rough from years of shouting over sirens. The boy nodded, surprise flickering in his gaze. "Tell me what's going on, son. Where's your mom?" Leo's lower lip quivered, but he straightened, glancing over his shoulder as if shadows might follow. "She's at home. The people from the Helping Hands place. They keep coming, saying we owe them for the food and stuff, but Mom says no more. She locked the basement door last night and this morning." He trailed off, fists clenching the flyer until it tore. Helping Hands, the local charity that paraded as the town's moral backbone, doling out aid with glossy brochures and council endorsements. Slate had heard whispers in the club's backroom talks, permits fast-tracked, donations vanishing like mist. Nothing solid, just the kind of rot that festered in small towns. "Take me to her," Slate said, rising to his full height, the decision settling over him like armor. Leo's eyes widened with a mix of fear and fragile hope, and he grabbed Slate's calloused hand, pulling him toward the festival's fringe, where bikes from the Iron Promise crew idled in a loose formation. Slate's own Harley waited among them, a black beast with chrome accents catching the dying light. He swung a leg over the seat, the engine rumbling to life with a deep, throaty growl that turned heads. Leo climbed on behind, tiny arms wrapping around Slate's waist, the boy's heartbeat pounding against his back like a drum of urgency. They rode out as the festival lights blurred into streaks, the cool evening air whipping past, carrying the scent of pine from the hills beyond town. Eldridge Hollow's main drag gave way to quieter lanes, houses with peeling paint and overgrown yards, the kind of place where secrets hid in plain sight. Leo directed them to a modest bungalow at the edge, its porch light flickering like a warning. The engine cut off with a final cough, silence rushing in, broken only by crickets and the distant hum of the celebration they'd left behind. Slate dismounted, helping Leo down, his boots crunching on the gravel path. The front door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling out, and the air held a stale tang, fear maybe, or something forgotten. "Stay behind me," Slate murmured, hand instinctively brushing the pocket where he kept his old firefighter's multi-tool, more habit than threat. He pushed the door open, the hinges creaking like a confession. Inside, the living room was dim, cluttered with stacks of charity boxes, canned goods, clothes, all stamped with Helping Hands logos. Rosa Vargas sat on the sagging couch, her face pale under the lamp's glow, 35 but looking a decade wearier. Her dark hair fell loose, and she clutched a mug like a shield, steam curling up in lazy spirals. She looked up sharply as they entered, recognition dawning on Slate's features. "Aaron, what, Leo, why did you, The boy rushed to her side, burying his face in her shoulder. "I had to, Mom. He's the one Dad talked about, the promise guy." Rosa's eyes met Slate's, a storm of relief and wariness brewing there. She nodded faintly, setting the mug aside. "It's worse than I thought," she whispered, voice cracking. "They've been pressuring me to sign over the house, say it's for community expansion. But I found things in the basement, papers that don't add up. If I talk—" Slate's jaw tightened, the weight of Javier's vow pressing harder. He glanced at the basement door across the room, a sturdy oak slab with a fresh lock glinting mockingly. No storming in, not yet. That wasn't the iron promise way. They built bridges from truth, not fists. But as Leo clung to his mother, Slate felt the club's quiet strength stirring in his veins. A call to the brothers, and they'd come, not as wolves, but as guardians. The basement held answers, and with them the key to pulling Rosa from the shadows. Outside, the night deepened, stars pricking the sky like distant witnesses. Slate pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the group chat. One message, and the promise would ignite. If you're just tuning in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stories like this one don't wait, and neither should you. Slate's thumb pressed send before doubt could creep in, the phone vibrating once in confirmation. The message was simple. "Need eyes at Vargas Place, edge of town. Bring steady hands." No alarms, no drama, just the quiet code that had pulled the Iron Promise crew through tighter spots than this. He pocketed the device, the cool metal grounding him as he turned back to Rosa and Leo. The living room felt smaller now, the air thick with the faint must of unpacked boxes and the sharper edge of anxiety. Rosa's hands trembled as she smoothed Leo's hair, her gaze flicking to the basement door like it might swallow them whole. "It's not just the pressure," she said, her voice a hushed thread in the dim light. "Javier. He knew something about Helping Hands before the fire. He mentioned offhand once, about donations not reaching who they should. I thought it was nothing, just talk. But after he was gone, they started showing up here. At first, it was help, groceries, bills covered. Then it turned. They want the house, say it's for a new center. I refused. And now—" She trailed off, eyes dropping to the torn flyer in Leo's fist, its cheerful logo mocking from the floor. Slate nodded, pulling a worn armchair closer, the fabric sighing under his weight. He didn't push. Iron Promise had learned that truths surfaced best in silence, not force. Outside, the night's chill seeped through the thin walls, carrying the distant rumble of engines, his brothers answering the call. Leo shifted on the couch, his small frame pressed against his mother's side, the bruise on his jaw, catching the lamplight like a shadow refusing to fade. "They came last night," the boy murmured, barely audible, yelling through the door. "Mum wouldn't let me see." The first bike growled into the driveway minutes later, followed by two more, their headlights slicing the darkness like beacons. Slate rose to meet them at the door, the porch creaking under his boots. First through was Marcus Forge Hale, 42, his forge-blackened arms a testament to his days welding rigs before the club became family. Behind him, Elena Sparks Ruiz, 38, a nurse who'd traded hospital shifts for road runs, her sharp eyes missing nothing. And trailing was Thomas Echo Landry, 51, the quiet veteran whose whispers in council meetings had toppled smaller scams before. They dismounted in unison, engines ticking as they cooled, the scent of hot exhaust mingling with the earthy damp of the yard. "Slate," Forge greeted, clasping his forearm in a grip that spoke volumes. "Kid's place." His voice was low, scanning the house without judgment. Slate jerked his head toward the interior. "Rosa Vargas, Javier's widow. Basement's locked tight. Says she found papers down there, helping hands angle." The name hung between them, a shared undercurrent of suspicion. Sparks knelt briefly to Leo's level as they entered, her presence a soft counter to the leather and chrome, offering a gentle smile that eased the boy's tension. "We're here to help sort this," she said, her words carrying the weight of someone who'd bandaged more than wounds. They gathered in the living room, the space transforming into a makeshift command. Chairs pulled into a loose circle, a notepad and phone cameras at the ready. No badges, no warrants, just this steady rhythm of people who'd built trust from ashes. Rosa hesitated, then rose, fishing a key from her pocket on a chain that looked like it had seen better days. "I locked it after they left. Didn't want Leo near it." Her fingers shook as she handed it over to Slate, the metal warm from her skin. He took it, meeting her eyes, a silent vow echoing Javier's. The basement stairs descended into cooler air, thick with the smell of concrete and old paper, dust motes swirling in the beam of Forge's flashlight. The space was cramped, lit by a single bare bulb that buzzed faintly overhead. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with charity cast-offs, blankets folded neatly, jars of preserves gathering cobwebs. But in the corner, a metal file cabinet stood sentinel, its drawers slightly ajar, papers spilling like secrets too heavy to contain. Slate approached first, the wooden steps groaning under his weight, each creak amplifying the pulse in his ears. He pulled the top drawer, the hinges protesting with a metallic scrape. Inside, folders crammed with receipts, ledgers handwritten in tight script. Dates stretched back years. Donations listed against outflows that didn't match. Thousands funneled to administrative costs. Names crossed out like ghosts. Deeper in, a stack of letters, typed and official, demanding signatures on property transfers. Rosa's name was there, circled in red, alongside threats veiled as consequences for non-compliance. No overt signs of harm, but the coercion seeped through the ink, reminders of debts incurred, hints at isolation if she spoke. Sparks photographed each page methodically, her flash popping like distant lightning, while Echo scanned for patterns, his brow furrowing at discrepancies tied to town permits. "Look at this," Forge muttered, holding up a faded envelope from the bottom drawer. Inside, a photo. Javier, younger, shaking hands with a Helping Hands board member at some event, smiles wide but eyes guarded. Tucked behind it, a memo, Javier's notes, scribbled in the margins. "Funds rerouted. Follow the permits." The pieces clicked, a quiet thunder in Slate's chest. Javier had seen the rot early, tried to flag it quietly, the fire that took him. Coincidence, or a spark to silence? Upstairs, Rosa paced as they emerged, the evidence bundled in a clean folder. Leo watched from the couch, his fear easing into something like resolve. "We don't rush this," Slate said, setting the folder on the coffee table, the wood scarred from years of life. "Document, verify, then daylight. Club's got contacts, clean ones. We'll get this to the right ears." The words weren't bluster. Iron promise moved like shadows with purpose. Alliances forged in backroom coffees and late-night rides. As the group murmured plans, Sparks offering to cross-check medical aid logs, Echo plotting a discreet council tip, the first hints of dawn grayed the windows. Rosa sank back onto the couch, Leo curling against her, the weight lifting just enough to breathe. Slate stepped outside, the morning air crisp with dew, bikes lined up like silent sentinels. He lit a cigarette, the flame flickering against the chill, Javier's promise burning brighter now. This wasn't vengeance, it was restitution, pulling light into corners where darkness had rooted deep. The town would wake soon, festival echoes fading, but the real story simmered beneath. Helping Hand's facade, polished for parades, hid fractures that one whisper and one fulfilled oath could shatter. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The morning light filtered through the bungalow's thin curtains, painting the living room in soft greys and golds, as if the sun itself hesitated to intrude on the fragile calm. Slate stood on the porch, the cigarette's ember glowing like a tiny forge in the dawn chill, smoke curling upward to join the mist rising from the dew-kissed grass. Behind him, the low voices of his crew wove through the open door, Forge sorting the folder's contents with methodical care, Sparks murmuring reassurances to Rosa, Echo jotting notes on a battered pad. Leo had dozed off on the couch, his small chest rising and falling in uneasy rhythm, the bruise on his jaw a fading purple under the improving light. The air carried the faint, acrid bite of exhaust from the bikes, now silent guardians in the driveway, their chrome dulled by the night's residue. Slate exhaled slowly, grinding the cigarette under his boot heel, the grit crunching like a promise ground into earth. Javier's photo from the basement burned in his mind, not just the image, but the implication, a thread pulling at the edges of that old fire. He'd always chalked Javier's death to bad luck, a beam giving way in the blaze's fury. But now, with the memo's scribbles staring back, doubt crept in like fog off the hills. Helping Hands wasn't just a charity. It was a web, permits and donations, twisted into something that ensnared the vulnerable. Rosa's house, Javier's suspicions. It all pointed to a deeper rot, one that had waited years to surface. Inside, Rosa poured coffee from a chipped pot, the steam rising in fragrant wisps that cut the musty air. Her hands steadied now, the keychain back around her neck like a talisman. "I never connected it to Javier," she admitted, passing mugs around the circle of chairs. The liquid was black and strong, grounding the group in its bitter warmth. "After the fire, I was lost. They showed up with casseroles, offers to help with the mortgage. I signed what I thought were thanks, waivers for aid. But the letters started coming. Debts I didn't remember. Threats if we didn't contribute the property for the greater good." Forge nodded, flipping through the ledgers, his thick fingers tracing columns that didn't align. "These numbers, donations from town events, festivals like last night's, in but not out. And the permits? Fast-tracked through council channels. Looks like they're flipping land for private gain, using charity as cover." His voice was steady, the welder's precision turning puzzle pieces into a frame. Sparks set her phone down. Uploads complete to a secure club drive, backups against any shadows that might reach. "I've seen it in the ER," she said, her tone laced with quiet fire. "Folks too scared to report. Signs of stress wearing them down. Rosa, you did right locking that door. Kept Leo safe." Echo leaned forward, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, the veteran's gaze cutting through the haze. Javier's notes mention a board member, guy named Harlan Tate, runs the council's community arm. If we trace the money trail to him, it unravels quiet-like. No need for noise yet. He tapped the pad, sketching a rough map of connections, helping hands to council approvals, to land deals on the town's edge. The bungalow sat smack in the middle, a holdout in a row of expanded lots, now sporting shiny new builds that screamed profit over purpose. Rosa's face tightened, memories flickering like old film reels. Harlan came himself once, after Leo's school mentioned we were behind on fees. Smiling, all-polished suit and handshake, said the house could be a beacon for their new outreach, but his eyes... cold, like he already owned it. She glanced at her son, sleeping unaware, and the room fell silent, the weight of protection settling heavier. Slate re-entered then, the doors creak, pulling their focus, his presence an anchor in the swelling tide. He took the mug Rosa offered, the ceramic warm against his palm, and sank into the armchair, the springs protesting softly. "We move careful," Slate said, his gravel voice threading the plan like rebar in concrete. "First, I take Rosa and Leo to the club safe house, old mill on the outskirts, stocked and quiet. Sparks, you ride with them. Forge, Echo, dig deeper on those permits. Quiet calls, old contacts, no direct lines to Tate yet." The words weren't commands, but bonds, the iron promise way. Shared load, no one left exposed. Rosa nodded, gathering a small bag with Leo's things, his favorite jacket, a worn stuffed bear from Javier's side of the bed. The boy stirred as she shook him gently, rubbing his eyes against the light, confusion melting into trust at the sight of the crew. They loaded up in pairs, engines purring to life with restrained power, the convoy slipping from the driveway like ghosts at first light. Slate led on his Harley, the road unspooling ahead, winding through Eldridge Hollow's sleeping veins, past the festival grounds now littered with confetti and faded banners, the Helping Hands booth dismantled like a lie packed away. The air rushed cool and clean, pine-scented from the encroaching woods, Leo's arms tight around Rosa in Sparks' sidecar, a makeshift shield of leather and resolve. Behind, Forge and Echo peeled off toward town, their bikes humming toward the library's public records and a neutral coffee spot for discreet digs. At the mill, the safe house loomed as a relic of better days, rusted silos against the sky, but inside, the club had carved sanctuary, clean bunks, a kitchen humming with fresh supplies, windows overlooking the river's lazy bend. Rosa settled Leo on a cot, tucking the bear under his arm, the boy's eyelids drooping again in the unfamiliar peace. "Thank you," she whispered to Slate, standing in the doorway, the morning sun haloing her weary frame. "Javier always said you were the steady one, I see it now." Slate grunted, a half-smile cracking his beard. Promise kept late, but kept. He stepped out to the gravel lot, phone buzzing with Echo's first update. A permit anomaly, land flipped to a shell company tied to Tate's family. The pieces mounted, a quiet storm building. Back in town, Forge's call confirmed it. Donations siphoned, widows like Rosa targeted for relief that masked takeover. No overt force, just the slow grind of paperwork and isolation, eroding lives like water on stone. By midday, the crew reconvened at the mill, sandwiches unwrapped on a scarred table, the river's murmur a soothing underscore. Echo spread printouts, the web clearer. Helping Hands as front for a land grab, council complicity shielding it. Javier's death? A loose end tied off, perhaps, in the warehouse blaze funded by their aid. Slate's fist clenched under the table, not in rage, but resolve, the kind that forged legacies from loss. "We compile it all," he said, voice low. "Anonymized report to the state oversight. Let the light do the work." Rosa joined them, Leo playing quietly with a deck of cards nearby, the boys' laughter a rare spark. She added her piece, a recorded call from Tate, veiled warnings she'd saved on an old phone. Sparks synced it, the digital trail unbreakable. As the sun climbed higher, casting diamond glints on the water, the plan solidified. Protection first, exposure second. No heroes charging gates, just the steady unraveling of deceit, honor pulling truth from hiding. Outside, Slate walked the riverbank, stones skipping under his boot, the current whispering of paths forward. The club had faced worse, wars ended, families mended, but this struck personal, Javier's echo in every ripple. The news would break soon, not with sirens, but a quiet front-page reckoning, forcing Eldridge Hollow to see the shadows its pillars cast. Word of the findings spread through club channels by afternoon, allies in media and law stirring. Clean hands only, the iron promise creed. Rosa watched from the window, Leo at her side. The safe house a brief haven before the storm's eye. Slate's phone lit up again, Tate's office inquiring after delinquent aid recipients. The web tightened, but so did their circle. Lealdad inked in action, not words. As evening approached, the first cracks showed, a council aide calling Echo anonymously, nerves fraying. The town stirred, whispers of irregularity at Helping Hands booths. Slate stood tall, the promise no longer a weight, but a fire guiding them through. Redensome waited in the truth's dawn, one documented secret at a time. The afternoon sun slanted through the mill's grimy windows, casting elongated shadows across the scarred wooden table where the Iron Promise crew pored over their growing dossier. The river outside murmured steadily, a counterpoint to the rustle of papers and the soft click of Sparks' laptop keys. Slate leaned against the rough-hewn wall, arms crossed over his vest, the faint scent of damp stone and machine oil clinging to the air like an old memory. Rosa sat nearby, her fingers tracing the edge of a photo from the basement files. Javier, mid-laugh at some long-forgotten barbecue, his eyes crinkling with the easy warmth that had drawn Slate to him in their firefighting days. Leo played quietly on the floor with a set of mismatched checkers, the pieces clicking like hesitant footsteps, his earlier fear subdued but not erased. Echo broke the silence first, sliding a fresh printout across the table. His voice a measured whisper honed from years of briefing troops in shadowed tents. Tate's shell company, it's layered but not invisible. Funds from Helping Hands funneled through it to buy up edge lots cheap, then resell at markup to developers. Rosa's place is the last holdout in that row. Javier's warehouse, it was slated for one of those flips before the fire wiped the plans clean. The words hung heavy, the implications slicing through the room like a cold draft. Slate's jaw tightened, the scar on his cheek pulling taut. A remnant from that same blaze, where he dragged Javier clear only for the roof to claim him moments later. Coincidence? The memo's scribbles suggested otherwise, a quiet sabotage buried in accidents. Rosa's breath caught, her hand freezing on the photo. He came home that night smelling of smoke and suspicion, said the permits for the warehouse were rushed, donations tied to it somehow. I told him to let it go. Focus on us. If I'd pushed... Her voice fractured, eyes glistening with the sharp regret of paths not taken. Sparks reached over, squeezing her shoulder gently. The nurse's touch a bridge of shared burdens. You couldn't have known, but you're speaking now. That's the strength Javier saw in you. The room nodded in quiet accord, the family's chosen bonds weaving tighter. Leather-clad guardians around a widow and her son, honoring a vow that time hadn't dulled. Forge cleared his throat, his welder's hands splayed on the table, calluses like maps of endurance. State oversight's my next call. I've got a contact from the old union days. Clean, no ties. We'll package this as anonymous tip. Ledgers, recordings, the photo. Tate's web unravels if they audit the permits. He glanced at Slate, seeking the nod that sealed decisions. Slate pushed off the wall, the floorboards creaking under his boots, and paced to the window. Outside, the river bent lazily, sunlight glinting off its surface like scattered promises. Do it. But we watch our backs. Tate's not alone. Council whispers mean eyes everywhere. The plan felt solid, a scaffold of truth against the corruption's sway, but unease stirred in his gut, the kind that had saved him in blazes and brawls alike. As if summoned by the thought, Slate's phone buzzed in his pocket, the vibration sharp against his thigh. He fished it out, screen lighting with an unknown number. Local prefix. The crew fell silent, tension coiling like a spring. He answered on speaker, voice steady as gravel. Monroe. A pause, then a smooth baritone, oily with false concern. Mr. Monroe, this is Harlan Tate. Heard through the grapevine your stirring interest in our little charity. Admirable, but unnecessary. Helping Hands is all above board. Permits, audits, the works. Perhaps we can meet, clear the air, for the community's sake. The words dripped sincerity, but Slate caught the undercurrent, a veiled probe testing defenses. Rosa's face paled, recognition flashing as she mouthed the name. Leo paused his game, checkers forgotten, inching closer to her side. Slate kept his tone even, the firefighter's calm masking the biker's edge. Appreciate the outreach, Tate, but we're just folks looking out for neighbors. If everything's clean, no harm in a look. A chuckle from the other end, too polished. Of course, though meddling can complicate things, debts, properties, families relying on aid, wouldn't want misunderstandings. The line went dead, leaving a chill in its wake, the threat woven subtle as smoke. The crew exchanged glances, the air thickening with resolve. He's circling, Echo said, already noting the number for tracing. Sparks bundled the files tighter, her movements precise. Safe house holds for now, but we rotate watches. I'll check on Leo. Keep him steady. She guided the boy to a corner bunk, pulling out a deck of cards for distraction, her voice soft as she dealt hands of go-fish, laughter bubbling tentative from Leo's lips. Rosa stood, joining Slate at the window, the river's flow mirroring her turbulent thoughts. He called our home last week. Same tone. I locked the basement then, but it felt like walls closing in. Slate placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture brotherly, echoing Javier's trust. Not anymore. Iron promise doesn't bend to whispers. We stand. By late afternoon, Forge's call connected. The oversight contact promising a review by week's end, eyes widening at the prelim numbers. Echo uncovered more. Tate's family ties to the warehouse owners. A pattern of donations preceding fires that cleared land quietly. No proof of arson yet, but the shadows lengthened, Javier's death reframing as potential sacrifice to the scheme. Slate stepped out to the gravel lot, the sun dipping toward the hills, painting the silos in fiery hues. He fired up his Harley for a quick scout ride, engines rumble a declaration, weaving the back roads toward town. Eldridge Hollow stirred. Festival cleanup crews hauling trash, but undercurrents rippled, a helping hands van idling near the council offices, figures glancing his way. Back at the mill as dusk settled, the group fortified. Curtains drawn, a perimeter walk by Forge's steady stride. Dinner was simple, stew from cans, heated over a portable stove, the savory steam cutting the chill. Leo ate hungrily. Stories from Sparks drawing smiles, tales of club rides under starlit skies. Rosa watched, a flicker of hope softening her features, the weight of isolation lifting in the circle's warmth. Slate sat apart, cleaning his multi-tool with rhythmic wipes, mind turning the day's threads. Tate's call was a feint, but it signaled pressure building, intimidation's first brush, testing if they'd fold. Night fell fully, stars wheeling overhead like silent allies. Echo's trace pinged. Tate's line routed through a charity office, logs showing calls to Rosa's number spiking post-Javier. The puzzle sharpened, moral justice coiling for release. Slate doused the lantern, the room plunging into ember glow from the stove. "Rest shifts," he murmured. "Tomorrow we push the report. Truth's our weapon, quiet but unbreakable." As snores rose softly, Rosa lay beside Leo, whispering thanks to the dark, the promise's echo lulling her toward uneasy sleep. Outside, the river whispered on, carrying secrets toward daylight, the club's lealdad a dam against the flood. Slate took first watch on the porch, the cool night air laced with pine and distant rain. His silhouette etched against the mill's bulk. Javier's face lingered in his thoughts, not as ghost but guide. The oath fulfilled not in fury, but in the steady light of exposure. The town slept unaware, but dawn would bring ripples, the rot's facade cracking under honor's weight. If this story's pulling at your heart, smash that like button. It helps spread these tales of quiet courage. The night deepened around the old mill, the river's murmur swelling into a steady lullaby under a canopy of stars that pierced the velvet sky like unblinking eyes. Slate shifted on the porch step, the rough wood biting into his palms, the chill seeping through his jeans as he scanned the shadowed tree line. The air hung heavy with the scent of wet earth and lingering stew from inside, a faint comfort against the encroaching dark. His multi-tool lay open on his knee, blade catching moonlight in a silver gleam, but his mind wandered the threads of the day. Tate's call, the ledger's lies, Javier's scribbled warnings resurfacing like embers from ash. No sleep for him yet. Watch meant vigilance, the club's unspoken rhythm pulsing in his veins. Inside, the safe house breathed softly, the crew rotating into rest. Forge snored lightly from a bunk, his massive frame a bulwark even in slumber, while Echo hunched over the laptop in the corner, screen's blue glow etching lines on his face as he cross-referenced digital trails. Sparks had taken the kitchen watch after dinner, her footsteps a quiet pad on the linoleum, brewing tea that steamed with herbal notes of chamomile, easing Rosa's frayed nerves. Leo slept soundly now, curled under a wool blanket on the cot, his stuffed bear clutched tight, the day's tensions melting into dreams where shadows held no sway. Rosa sat beside him, her silhouette framed by the lantern's warm halo, fingers absently braiding a loose strand of her hair, a habit from quieter times, before the charity's smiles turned sharp. Echo looked up as Slate slipped back inside, the door's latch clicking like a secret shared. "Trace on Tate's calls," he murmured, voice low to not disturb the peace. Pattern matches, spikes after Javier's shifts right before the warehouse went up. And get this, helping hands ensured that building heavy payout routed through the same shell, not arson-proof, but the smoke's thick. He slid the laptop over, pixels mapping connections, donations to fires to land flips, a cycle preying on loss. Slate studied it, the glow reflecting in his eyes, a knot tightening in his chest. Javier hadn't just seen the rot. He'd brushed against it, perhaps too close, his death a convenient clearing of the board. The thought settled like lead, not rage, but a deeper call to set it right, honor demanding more than survival. Rosa stirred, rising to join them at the table, the chair scraping softly on the floor. Her eyes, shadowed but steady, met Slate's. "I remember Javier coming home late that week, hands shaking as he showered off the soot. He wouldn't say much, just held me tighter, whispered about protecting what mattered, if this ties to him." She trailed off, glancing at Leo, the boy's innocent sleep a stark contrast to the web closing in. Sparks poured her a mug, the steam curling like unspoken fears, and sat across, her nurse's intuition reading the room. "It does tie, and that's why we're here. Not to fight shadows, but to drag them into light. You've got strength in you, Rosa, same as he did." Geez, the conversation wove on in hushed tones, the river's rush underscoring their words like a distant chorus. Forge roused midway, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and added his piece. A union contact confirming the oversight wheels turning, an auditor flagged for morning review. No fanfare, just the grind of process, the iron promise way, building cases from facts, not fury. Yet as midnight ticked past, a low rumble pierced the night. Engines not theirs, approaching from the back road. Slate tensed, hand drifting to the multi-tool, signaling silence. The crew moved as one, fluid from years of drills, Echo dousing the laptop, Sparks guiding Rosa and Leo to the inner room, Forge cracking the door with a peek. Headlights swept the gravel lot. 2 vans idling at the tree line, unmarked but reeking of purpose. Figures emerged, 3 men in crisp jackets, the Helping Hands logo faint on sleeves, flashlights probing the mill's edges like fingers testing a lock. Tate's reach, extending in the dark, a quiet intimidation to rattle without trace. Slate watched from the shadows, breath steady, the air now sharp with their cologne and exhaust. One muttered into a phone, voice carrying on the breeze, "Clear the holdout, make it look like concern." They lingered, circling the perimeter, but found no breach. The club's precautions held, motion sensors silent, paths obscured by overgrowth. The vans retreated after 10 tense minutes, taillights fading into the woods, leaving only the echo of tires on dirt. Slate exhaled, the group reconvening in the main room, adrenaline humming like a live wire. "Probe," he said simply, voice gravel over steel. "They're feeling the pressure, means our push is landing." Echo nodded, already logging the plates for a discreet run. Rosa emerged from the inner room, Leo still asleep in her arms, his weight a reminder of stakes beyond ledgers. "They came to the house like that once," she whispered, knocking soft, asking if we needed assistance. "I sent them away, but the fear stuck." Her words hung, a bridge to Javier's era, when similar shadows had loomed. Dawn crept in early, grey light filtering through cracks in the boarded windows, the river awakening with a brighter sparkle. Breakfast was hasty, oatmeal stirred over the stove, its earthy warmth cutting the night's chill, spoons clinking against bowls in rhythmic solidarity. Leo woke with a yawn, rubbing his eyes, the bruise on his jaw a mere shadow now, and joined the table, his curiosity sparking questions about the biker uncles. Sparks spun a light tale of road adventures, drawing giggles that lightened the air, while Forge sketched a rough barrier plan for the mill's approaches, nothing aggressive, just eyes and ears. By mid-morning, the oversight call came through Forge's line, the auditor's voice crisp over speaker, discrepancies flagged, a full probe launching on the permits and funds. Tate's web quivered, first threads loosening. Slate stepped out to the riverbank, skipping stones with Leo, the plinks echoing like small victories. The boy mimicked him, arms swinging with boyish determination, water rippling in response. "Dad promised he'd always come back," Leo said suddenly, pebble arcing true. "You think he knew about the bad guys?" Slate knelt, meeting the child's gaze, the sun warming his back. "He knew enough to trust the right people, and we're keeping that going, kid. For him." Back inside, the crew packed the dossier, files zipped, recordings encrypted, ready for anonymous drop at a neutral relay point in town. Rosa added one last piece, a journal entry from Javier tucked in the basement hall, his words simple. "Watch the hands that give, sometimes they take more." The entry sealed it, a personal echo amplifying the moral weight. As noon approached, Slate led the ride out, convoy tight, bikes humming through sun-dappled roads. Eldridge Hollow bustled unaware, shop doors swinging, festival remnants cleared, but undercurrents stirred, a newsstand headline teasing charity audit rumors, whispers in coffee lines. They dropped the package at the relay, a plain envelope in a library slot, no traces, then circled back to the mill, the loop closing without incident. Tate's silence now felt heavier, a brewing storm held at bay. Afternoon brought Echo's update. council murmurs of internal reviews, a board member stepping back quietly. The rot exposed itself in increments, justice unfolding not in clashes, but in the inexorable pull of truth. Rosa watched the river from the window, Leo napping nearby, a tentative peace settling. "This feels like starting over," she said to Slate, who nodded from the doorway, the light catching his greying beard. Javier's promise, long dormant, now bloomed in action. Redemption not for the dead, but for the living, loyalty forging paths through deceit. The day waned, shadows lengthening, but the club's resolve burned steady, carrying them toward the reckoning's edge. The sun dipped below the hills, bleeding orange across the river's surface like spilled fire as the Iron Promise crew gathered once more in the mill's main room. The air inside carried the faint tang of cooling stew and printer ink, the dossier now a thick binder sealed with nondescript tape, its weight a tangible emblem of truths unearthed. Slate paced the worn floorboards, boots thudding softly in rhythm with the water's distant rush, his mind sifting the day's gains. The auditor's probe accelerating, council ripples turning to waves, Tate's silence a coiled serpent. Rosa sat at the table, Leo dozing against her side, the boy's head pillowed on her lap, his breaths even in the lantern's golden flicker. The safe house felt less like refuge and more like a forge now, tempering resolve in the heat of impending exposure. Echo broke the quiet first, his voice a low rumble as he tapped the laptop screen, lines of data scrolling like confessions. "Relay drop confirmed. Package in hands by morning. Oversight's pulling strings. A preliminary report hits internal channels tonight. Tate's name's flagged, along with the shell trails." He leaned back, the chair creaking under his frame, eyes sharp with the satisfaction of patterns locked. Forge nodded from his spot by the window, arms crossed over his broad chest, the fading light etching his silhouette against the glass. "Union buddy says media's sniffing. Small press first, but it'll snowball. No direct ties to us, just the facts doing the walking." The words hung with quiet power, the club's method, not thunder but the steady erosion of lies, honor-carving paths through deceit. Rosa shifted gently, careful not to wake Leo, her fingers tracing the binder's edge as if it held Javier's hand. "He'd be proud," she murmured, voice threaded with a mix of ache and steel. "Always said the real fires weren't the ones you see, but the ones burning slow under the surface. It's putting them out." Slate paused his pacing, meeting her gaze across the room, the weight of the old vow settling warmer now, less a burden and more a shared flame. Javier's photo peeked from the binder's corner, his smile a silent nod, reminding them all that promises endured beyond graves, binding the living in quiet allegiance. Sparks emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of mugs steaming with fresh coffee, the rich aroma cutting through the evening's chill like a lifeline. She set it down, her movements efficient yet tender, the nurse in her attuned to the subtle fractures of exhaustion. "Drink up," she said, sliding one to Slate. "Watch is doubled tonight. Tate's probe last night means he's desperate. Expect more shadows." Her eyes flicked to Rosa and Leo, a protective glint there, the family chosen extending beyond blood to those pulled from isolation's grip. As they sipped, the hot liquid grounding them, conversation turned to contingencies, fallback routes if pressure mounted, signals for the broader club network waiting in the wings. No bravado, just the pragmatic weave of loyalty, each voice adding strength to the circle. Outside, twilight deepened, the river's murmur swelling with the night's approach, crickets stirring in the underbrush like an awakening audience. Slate stepped onto the porch again, the wood cool underfoot, mug warming his calloused palm. The air nipped sharper now, laced with pine and the faint metallic hint of impending rain, stars emerging one by one as sentinels overhead. His thoughts drifted to Javier's last moments in the warehouse blaze, the acrid smoke, the beams groan, the clasped hands sealing the oath amid chaos. That fire had scarred him physically, burns mapping his arms like forgotten roads. But this one, the slow burn of corruption, scarred deeper. Fulfilling the promise wasn't erasure, it was redemption, pulling Rosa and Leo from the same flames that had claimed their kin, proving honor's quiet roar louder than any siren's wail. A low hum shattered the peace, engines multiple approaching from the main road this time, deliberate and unhurried. Slate tensed, signaling inside with a sharp whistle, the crew converging silently. Forge at the door, Echo securing the laptop, Sparks herding Rosa and Leo to the inner sanctum. Headlights pierced the tree line, resolving into 3 sedans, sleek and official, pulling into the gravel lot with a crunch that echoed like judgment. Figures stepped out, 2 in suits, 1 in a sheriff's uniform, flashlights sweeping the mill's facade. Not raid, but presence, the air thickening with their cologne and authority's starch. "Mr. Monroe," the lead suit called, voice smooth as polished stone, stepping forward with hands visible. Harlan Tate himself, flanked by an aide and a deputy, his smile a mask over the strain etching his features. Up close, in the porch light's harsh glow, crow's feet deepened around eyes that darted like cornered prey. "We meet at last," words spreading about. Irregularities at helping hands, thought I'd extend an olive branch, discuss concerns, perhaps mediate for Ms. Vargas. The words dripped concern, but Slate caught the probe, the attempt to gauge how deep the dossier cut, to spin narratives before the probe landed. Slate descended the steps slowly, boots deliberate on the gravel, positioning himself between the porch and the visitors, his frame a wall of leather and resolve. The crew watched from shadowed windows, unseen but ready. "Tate," Slate acknowledged, voice gravel steady, no warmth but no threat. "Mediation's for those who need it. We're just seeing to a friend's safety, old promise, nothing more." Behind him, the door cracked open, Rosa peeking out, her presence a quiet assertion, Leo's small hand in hers. Tate's gaze flicked past, calculating, but he nodded, feigning understanding. Commendable, though stirring old matters can unearth. Complications, properties, debts, best resolved amicably. The deputy shifted, hand near his belt, but no move. This was theatre, intimidation veiled as courtesy. The exchange stretched taut, rain beginning to patter on the leaves, droplets hissing on hot engine hoods. Tate pressed gently, offers of relocation aid, hints at dropped inquiries if the family cooperated. But Slate parried with silence, letting the man's own words tangle. "Facts speak louder than branches," Slate said finally, eyes locked. "Oversight's got the ledgers now. Clean hands win." Tate's smile faltered, the mask slipping, and after a lingering scan of the mill, he retreated, sedans reversing into the dusk, taillights blurring in the drizzle. The crew exhaled as one, rain drumming harder on the tin roof, washing the tension like grime from chrome. Inside, Rosa hugged Leo tighter, relief etching her features, while Sparks brewed more coffee, the steam a veil against the night's edge. He blinked, Echo noted, logging the encounter. Means the probe's biting deep. Forge secured the doors, his presence a bulwark, as they reviewed the standoff. No escalation, just another thread in the unraveling. As the storm swelled, thunder rolling distant like applause, Slate stood by the window, rain streaking the glass in silver trails. Tate's visit marked the turning. Corruption cornered, lashing out but weakening. Javier's promise pulsed stronger, a legacy of integrity against the rot, the chosen family standing unbowed. Dawn would bring headlines, the news breaking wide, helping hands exposed, Tate's web collapsing under daylight's weight. But for now, in the rain's rhythm, they held the line, redemption's fire kindled in every drop. The rain hammered the mill's tin roof like a relentless drumbeat. turning the gravel lot into a slick mirror of the stormy sky, reflections of lightning fracturing across puddles. Inside, the air hummed with the scent of damp wood and fresh brewed coffee, steam rising from mugs clutched in steady hands. Slate wiped condensation from the window, his breath fogging the glass briefly before the chill chased it away, watching the tail lights of Tate's sedans vanish into the downpour. The standoff had ended without sparks, but the air crackled with aftermath. The probe's momentum now a force of its own, pulling threads loose from the charity's polished facade. Rosa stood nearby, Leo tucked against her, the boy's eyes wide but unafraid in the lantern's glow, the rain's rhythm lulling him towards sleep once more. Echo closed the laptop with a soft snap, the screen's light dying like a snuffed ember. "That was his last play," he said, voice low and certain, leaning back in the chair that groaned under his weight. Oversight's report drops at dawn. Full audit, public filing. Tate scrambling. But the ledgers don't lie. Forge nodded from the doorway, his silhouette broad against the storm's flashes, arms folded as if bracing against an unseen gale. Sparks busied herself in the kitchen, the clink of spoons against mugs a counterpoint to the thunder, her movements a quiet anchor for the room. Rosa sank into a seat, exhaustion etching deeper lines around her eyes. But a spark of resolve flickered there, mirroring Javier's unyielding spirit. "He came to warn us off," she murmured, fingers tightening on Leo's shoulder. "But seeing you all stand, it's like Javier's here, holding the line." Slate turned from the window, the floorboards creaking under his boots, rain dripping from the eaves outside like tears unshed. The multi-tool in his pocket felt heavier now, a talisman of the life that had forged him. Fires fought, promises sealed in heat and haste. Tate's veiled offers had echoed the basement letters, coercion dressed as kindness, but the iron promise didn't yield to shadows. They illuminated them. "Rest what you can," he said, his gravel voice threading calm through the tension. "Morning brings the light we built." The crew dispersed into shifts, the safe house settling into watchful quiet, the storm's fury a veil hiding their vigil from prying eyes. Dawn broke grey and sodden, the rain easing to a misty drizzle that beaded on the mill's silos like dew on forgotten steel. Slate rose first, the cot springs sighing as he stretched, joints protesting the night's vigil. The river ran swollen, its waters churning with the night's excess, carrying silt and secrets downstream. Coffee perked on the stove, its bitter aroma pulling the others awake. Forge cracking knuckles like welding sparks. Echo scanning updates on his phone. Sparks checking Leo's bruise with a gentle touch. The mark now a faint echo of fear. Rosa joined them at the table, Leo munching toast slathered in jam, the sticky sweetness a small rebellion against the shadows. Outside, the world stirred, birdsong piercing the mist, the distant hum of town traffic awakening Eldridge Hollow to a day that would redefine it. Echo's phone buzzed first, a news alert slicing the morning calm. He read aloud, voice steady. Local charity under state scrutiny, irregularities in funds, property dealings prompt full investigation. The article unfolded on the screen, pixels detailing the ledger's discrepancies, donations vanishing into shells, permits greased for private gain. Tate's name led the byline, his polished image juxtaposed with quotes from anonymous sources, widows pressured, lands flipped under aid's guise. No mention of iron promise, just the facts marching forward, the probe's hammer striking true. Rosa's hand flew to her mouth, eyes widening as Javier's photo surfaced in a sidebar, a file notation tying helping hands to the warehouse's rushed approvals. "It's out," she breathed, relief cracking her voice like sunlight through clouds. Leo looked up, jam on his chin, confusion giving way to a grin. "Does this mean the bad guys lose?" Slate ruffled the boy's hair. the gesture rough but tender, echoing the brotherly bonds that had pulled him through his own losses. Means truth wins, kid. Slow, but sure. The crew gathered closer, the binder open between them. Its pages now relics of a battle won without fists. Forge's union contact called next, confirming the audit scope. Tate's board dissolving, council reviews cascading. The web's strands snapping one by one. Media vans would roll soon, spotlights turning on the charities' booths, but the Iron Promise stayed shadowed, their work the unseen rebar holding justice upright. By midday the mist burned off, sun breaking through to gild the river in liquid gold, the mill's lot steaming as puddles evaporated. Rosa packed their things, simple duffels with clothes and memories. Her steps lighter, the key chain around her neck no longer a weight, but a badge. "The house is ours again," she said, standing in the doorway, Leo at her side, clutching his bear. Oversight froze the transfers, no more letters, no more knocks. Sparks hugged her, the embrace warm and swift, nurse's compassion sealing the bond. "Your family now. Doors always open." Forge and Echo loaded the bikes, engines coughing to life with throaty growls, the convoy ready to escort them home, not in triumph, but in quiet guardianship. The ride back wound through Eldridge Hollow's veins, the town alive with murmurs, coffee shop patrons huddled over papers, festival vendors dismantling booths with sidelong glances at news trucks idling nearby. Helping hand signs sagged like deflated banners, their smiles hollow in the daylight. Tate's office loomed on the main drag, windows dark, a closed-for-review notice taped crookedly to the door. No confrontation awaited. The exposure had done its work, corruption wilting under scrutiny's glare. At the bungalow, the porch light still flickered faintly, a beacon unextinguished, the air fresh with rain-washed earth and blooming jasmine from the neighbor's yard. Slate dismounted last, helping Leo down, the boy's sneakers splashing in a lingering puddle. Rosa unlocked the door, the hinges smoother now without fear's rust. Sunlight spilling into the living room, where charity boxes waited like surrendered spoils. She turned to the crew, eyes shining. "Javier's promise, you made it real. For us." Slate nodded, the words landing soft as dust settling. "Wasn't just his, it's ours." Handshakes and nods passed, the Iron Promise circle closing gentle, bikes rumbling away in formation, chrome flashing farewell under the climbing sun. Back on the road, Slate rode alone for a stretch, the wind whipping his beard, the engine's vibration syncing with his pulse. The scars on his arms itched faintly, reminders of flames past. But the vow's fulfillment eased an old ache, redemption not in erasing loss, but honoring it through action. Eldridge Hollow shrank in his mirrors, its secrets aired, the chosen family stronger for the stand. Javier's echo rode with him, a silent passenger on the endless highway, promises enduring like the road itself. In the days that followed, headlines swelled. Tate resigned amid probes, funds recovered for true aid, the charity's remnants reborn under watchful eyes. Rosa found work at a community center, clean, untainted, Leo laughing freer in schoolyards, the bruise forgotten. Iron Promise gatherings toasted the quiet victory, stories shared around campfires, the moral fire kindled anew. Slate returned to his routines, coffee at festivals, eyes open for whispers needing answers. Honor wasn't a blaze, it was the steady glow, guiding through the dark, binding souls in unbreakable loyalty. The river ran clearer now, carrying the town's confessions downstream, a testament to truths unearthed and lives reclaimed. Thanks for riding along on this journey of promises kept and shadows lifted. If these tales of quiet honor and chosen family move you, hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories that endure.